You are John Carter of Earth?
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to the DplusCast, where we discuss everything Disney Plus and beyond in streaming entertainment. My name's Garrett.
I'm Will.
And I'm Greg.
And on today's show, we welcome back John Varon to do a retrospective, or maybe an autopsy is a more fitting word, on a 2012 failure that indefinitely changed the way Hollywood does business. That's right, we're talking John Carter. You guys ready to go to Mars?
Hell yeah. Let's do it.
Let's go to Mars.
I guess so.
What happened to this place?
A new power threatens to destroy our city.
That don't look like a fair fight. You are ugly, but you are beautiful. You will fight for us! Get on.
Welcome back, John.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm excited to talk to you guys about the just most who is this for movie I've ever seen in my life.
That's a good way to put it.
What an experience. And you know what? We'll get to it, but we had quite a week. Quite a week in the company that is the Walt Disney Company. I don't know where to start. I think I want to start with the first Hamilton trailer dropping and it being one of the worst trailers I've ever seen in my life for a musical.
What did you want? It's a stage production.
Well, I'll tell you what I wanted.
Dynamic.
I'll tell you what I wanted. I wanted something where I could turn up my Sonos and I would hear, I would feel the beat. I wanted to feel the rhythm of the show. And the first trailer did not give us any of that.
It was pretty banger free, it's true.
They released a second trailer, which it's very odd that you would release two different trailers within 5 days. So I kind of think they knew they screwed up. The second trailer is much better. Much better. I'm very excited for Hamilton. Friday, July 3rd. I'm there, guys.
It's July 3rd?
Yeah, July 3rd, it drops on Disney Plus. You know what the thing is about the first trailer is there's two kinds of people in this world. There are people who know all of the Hamilton music, and there are people who know none of the Hamilton music. So to play like 3 seconds of 5 different songs, it's frantic and gross, and they should have known better. So that's my hot take.
Yeah, I can see that. I really, really enjoy Hamilton. I couldn't keep it. Was regular rotation for me for about a year. In perhaps the moment I reached peak nerdy white kid, My Shot was definitely a get hyped song for me for a little while. Which I like that song. It's real good. But yeah, that it's really difficult to make a stage production dynamic on film. Which is why plays aren't movies and movies aren't plays. So it was a little bit, especially one that's as our town as that one is, you know what I mean? So watching, they could have picked some more dynamic moments of choreography. They could have picked, again, more bombastic music. It was
again, they could have just shown words on the screen. If the music had been there, if the beat, just give me a damn drum, for God's sakes, right? They gave me nothing. So
yeah, I feel you.
Also this week, Greg, you're going to be very happy about this.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, a Generation Z has discovered Blank Check on TikTok.
About time.
Right?
I have several questions.
Yeah.
Beginning with what?
Yeah, so in one of our earlier episodes, we did a full deep dive into Blank Check, but now, absolutely a result of our show, Generation Z has discovered the creepy kiss that happens at the end of Blank Check, where an adult woman basically romantically kisses, how old was he, 11? Something like that?
He's 11. He's 11 in the film.
11?
Yeah.
Doesn't age too well.
Mr. McIntosh was in his 30s. But...
That's right. Mr. McIntosh was in his 30s. So
We
how do
can
you feel
only
about that,
assume.
Greg?
Huh? Well, it was a disturbing moment for all of us watching it at every phase of my life. and I'm glad that the children of today are here to call it out for what it is, and maybe just have that scene erased from the movie or something. That seems to be pretty popular nowadays.
No, leave it in. I'm a leave it in guy. Also this week, Disney's pushed Mulan. No surprise here. I don't think Mulan's getting released this year. Christopher Nolan and Warner Brothers can keep pushing Tenet 2 weeks forever, as far as I'm concerned. But guys, we're not going back to the movie theaters.
Christopher Nolan is a giant stubborn baby, isn't he?
Right?
He really is. He only makes movies. He only makes movies for the big screen.
Yeah.
That's it. He's like, I made it for a big screen. It's not fair. Oh, no.
It's kind of cute to watch him hope, though. Like, that he just keeps pushing back in 2-week increments, and he's just like, maybe July's old Chrissy's time to shine. You never know. Maybe. No, Christopher. It's not how this is going to go for you. You need to let this one go. I don't know. Maybe go direct some TV for a year to tide yourself over. So can I take us on just like a 120-second cul-de-sac? Do we like Christopher Nolan?
All right.
I'm lukewarm. Honestly, I think he makes really beautiful, large-scale films. But what I always feel his movies are lacking are like any sense of joy whatsoever. Everything's so gray and straightforward, and there's never even a character who like cracks a little joke and makes someone else smirk or smile for a second. There's no happiness in the worlds that he makes, and so that kind of knocks him down a peg for me, where I'm like, it's just never gonna hit the next level of a Spielberg or a Scorsese or a Tarantino, where you can really jump all in and feel it, because there's something lacking.
He's the thinking man, Zack Snyder.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
With Nolan for me, I mean, The Dark Knight is wonderful, but we have to give a lot of that credit to Heath Ledger. A lot of what detracts The Dark Knight from being really great is Nolan's writing in it, and so for me, I feel Christopher Nolan is the best one-time watcher director there is for me right now. Like, I'll watch any movie he makes. I will, but chances are I'm only going to watch it once, and I'm not going to want to revisit it. I haven't watched Inception for a second time. I will never watch Dunkirk for a second time.
I own Inception, and I haven't watched it.
Same. I got it at Amoeba Music for like $3 on Blu-ray, and it just sits there.
Yeah,
I
Amoeba.
never want to turn it on.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about Nolan. And I forgot about Interstellar. Like, I'll never watch Interstellar again. Come on.
I'm not convinced Christopher Nolan's ever met a person. I don't think he knows what they act like or how they feel about things or how they go through the world. Also, you're right. Thank you for shining a light on the fact that the script for The Dark Knight is kind of garbage.
Yeah.
The dialogue is terrible. Like the district attorney of Gotham City, after someone shouts "things are worse than ever" at a press conference, says, "But the night is always darkest before the dawn." Like, he wrote that into final draft, and then he read it back and was like, "Nailed it, Chris.
Nailed it.
Hey, Jonathan, let's you and me go have some Manhattans."
So we're getting a Pirates of the Caribbean reboot with Margot Robbie.
We are?
Yeah. She's teaming with the Birds of Prey writer, Christina Hodson.
Okay, that's cool. But, like, wait, is it a full reboot, like depth-free? Margot Robbie to star in a female-driven reboot. It's an all-female Pirates. It's a spin-off, so probably Jack Sparrow will show up and be like, "You're pirates now, ladies," or whatever, and then they'll sail off.
A larger Pirates universe is what they're hoping for.
But it's definitely Christina Hodson's writing it, and it's a female-driven Pirates reboot. Which,
hey, when you make one good movie, you just keep making more.
You should make 5 of them, and they should become increasingly up their own butts with their mythology, which will become relevant later.
It's the Colin Trevorrow model of Jurassic World, Greg. You know, you make one good thing, and then you just keep going until you make a movie that loses $300 million, like one we're going to discuss later.
Yeah,
and then you get banished back to animation.
Poor Andrew Stanton.
I can't wait to dunk on Andrew Stanton, and he's made some movies I really, really love. But yeah, oh man,
Yeah.
Most importantly, most newsworthy this week, though, Splash Mountain at Walt Disney World and Disneyland is going to be rethemed as Princess and the Frog. For those who may not know, it was based on some animated shorts from a movie called Song of the South, which, among being incredibly racist and insensitive, it's boring and it sucks all around. It is a bad movie. I understand if people want to defend Gone with the Wind, which HBO Max taking Gone with the Wind off of HBO Max, I disagreed with that because I felt it was a lazy move to do. I felt that
they brought it back with like the disclaimers and everything now.
Yeah, that's
so
what I hoped they would do.
You can create context. It's there, and I'm with you because Gone with the Wind is, from a technical standpoint, a really important film. Gone with the Wind is the first movie to have a production designer.
I did not know that.
Yeah, everything else had art directors before that, but because of the scale of the film, David O. Selznick, the producer, felt that there needed to be someone supervising the overall look of the film. So yeah, that's where production designers come from.
Wow. But see, yeah. So when HBO Max took it down, I disagreed with it. I felt that a harder move to do would be to, add some context to it when you put it back up. They only took it down without any explanation for like 24 hours. And of course, in this day and age, 24 hours is enough for everything to explode and Twitter to run amok.
You mean HBO Max's communication strategy was garbage?
Good Lord, man. Have you
It
seen?
It certainly was.
When I use HBO Max on my Apple TV, I still don't know if white or purple means that something is highlighted. Because there are things that are purple and white, like no matter what, and it's awful all around.
Yeah, HBO Max is a disaster, man. It is. It's got all the content. It's got great content. We can't deny that, but the rollout has been abysmal. I don't know if we talked about it last time, but not available on the Roku, not available for Amazon Stick either. So, or Amazon Fire, whatever it's called. So here you are. You're immediately missing out on huge chunks of potential audience who use those as their primary streaming platforms.
Tens of millions of people. Tens of millions. I think
it was like 18 million, or was it 80 million?
I think it was 80. I think between Roku and Amazon, it was like 80 million people.
Yeah, so here I am. I'm using Roku reliably for every other thing without any issue. And then all of a sudden HBO comes out day of. I'm ready to turn it on. Not available. No announcement that there was going to be any sort of, rollout that did not involve the Roku. Like, we didn't have any heads up on that. And then a couple days later, they actually pulled HBO Go from Roku as well.
Whoa!
So you can't really, if you were using a Roku or an Amazon Fire Stick, you cannot watch HBO using an HBO app at all, as it stands right now, which is crazy. So then I decide, all right, I guess I have to download something on my PlayStation 4, which of course I don't prefer to use as my streaming platform. It's there for gaming, and otherwise it's a stick, right? And then you put it in, and you install the thing, and it barely works. Yesterday I watched a number of things on HBO Max, and after each of them, the app had to like reload and was just doing this spinning ball thing, and I had to like quit the app, restart the PlayStation after each thing I watched on HBO Max.
That is not an ideal situation.
No.
Not ideal at all. Have any of you ever watched Song of the South in its entirety?
No. I had a variety VHS when I was a kid of like Disney songs, and Zippity Doodah was on there, but I've never actually seen Song of the South. And of the four of us, I think I'm the one that would have been exposed to it, frankly.
Yeah. Well, you can actually listen. I'm not gonna promote it, but you can find it easily on a .org type website where you can watch it. I wouldn't recommend it for many reasons, but at the top of the list is the racist stereotypes, but underneath that it's boring and just generally sucks. I'm actually surprised that Disney announced that they were retheming Splash Mountain so quickly. And I'm surprised that they did so in such a way that completely matched the moment perfectly culturally in the zeitgeist. You know, it was almost like they had it in their back pocket and they were waiting.
Yeah.
They were like, let's just save this. Let's save it.
As long as that horrible little firefly isn't on the ride, I'm fine. I hate that firefly. I hate that firefly so much. And Garrett, you don't have to think hard to figure out why.
So, how do you feel about Princess and the Frog since you are from the area of the Bayou?
It's fine. I just hate that firefly. That firefly is like Bobby Boucher levels of annoying for me. Like, it is very, very seldom that media comes for my people. Like, we are not an oppressed folk, but every decade or so, someone decides to put a buck-toothed Cajun in something. And every decade or so, I get real pissed off. That's just kind of how that goes for me. I'm still cartoonishly privileged compared to most people. But I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to be like, hey, that firefly kind of annoys me. He pisses me off. I don't like him.
Well, that's enough with news from this week. When we get back, we're going to talk a little John Carter for all you Taylor Kitsch fans.
And no one else.
No, nobody else.
For no one else.
Clear Eyes, Full Hearts. You guys Friday Night Lights?
I am. I'm a Taylor Kitsch fan, and this movie wasn't for me.
All right, we'll be back right after this.
Get on.
So I think there's only one thing to start this conversation about John Carter with, and that's McNulty.
Is it? Is that where we start? Like, yes, Garrett, it is McNulty, and I was excited too.
I was very excited.
It's honestly one of the first and only things in this movie that gets you a little excited because you, for a second while watching it, think about The Wire instead of John Carter.
So I know, John, your main beef or question about this movie is who is this for?
I feel like I've made that pretty clear over the course of the podcast so far.
Defend yourself. It's a very hot take. It's a very hot take.
Yeah, so it's weird because, like, this movie is, I know we're going to go into context later, but to just very briefly place it, like, this was greenlit a little bit before The Lone Ranger, and I feel like you got to understand these movies alongside each other because they're both only for, like, 80-year-old men. Like, this is based on a book that came out over 100 years ago, and has nothing to do with our current understanding of Mars or space travel or anything. This movie, the main character of this movie is a Confederate captain, and that is presented apolitically.
Yeah, that's our hero.
That's our hero. And I want to park on that for a second because I think that provides insight into how weirdly faithful to the source material that Andrew Stanton felt the need to be, because there's literally no reason they couldn't have turned him into a Union captain. Like, it would have affected nothing about the story.
Yeah, let's talk about Andrew Stanton for a second. So this was Andrew Stanton.
Oh, I'd love to.
This was Andrew Stanton's first foray, perhaps his last, into live action filmmaking. He'd won an Academy Award, maybe 2, for Finding Nemo and Wall-E. So I mean, listen, he was riding high at Pixar, and then he gets this movie, which in my quick research, apparently Robert Zemeckis turned this movie down. And the quote is, "George already pillaged all of that," referring to George Lucas and Star Wars. And
he's not wrong.
Is that not just the it's the smartest move ever made? And he's so right. I'm watching this movie and it's a Star Wars like adventure on an Avatar like planet trying to sell me an Indiana Jones type hero, and it fails at all 3.
Yeah, it whiffs every single one. Andrew Stanton did not understand how to make a live action film, and from everything I read, was really hubristic about when he came in. Like, he actually was quoted as saying, "I said to my producers, is it just me, or do we actually know how to do this better than live action crews do?" The answer, Andrew, is no. No, you don't.
No.
They're different things. Yeah, it's he had to do 2 rounds of reshoots because he told Disney that they basically, he said, the quote is, "The thing I had to explain to Disney was, you're asking a guy who's only known how to do it this way to suddenly do it with 1 reshoot." And I'm like, Andrew, maybe you shouldn't have made a live action movie then, because that's how live action movies get made. He also was, like I said, slavishly devoted to the source material, even though this movie tries to stuff things from the second book in. Like, the whole thing with the Therns, those, like, god beings that Mark Strong plays one of them, those guys aren't introduced until the second film. Or the second book, rather.
And talk about the lamest introduction in a movie ever. They float down like Casper's mother.
Yeah, they're just around all of a sudden. I didn't understand anything about that first scene until like 45 minutes into the movie.
It's also really generic. That opening scene, it's like just the most standard CGI action sequence you've seen. It's like they're trying to mash Troy with Transformers, with Star Wars, all in just one horrible.
And they ended up with
CGI.
Revenge of the Titans.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It's rough. Amanda, my wife, and I had seen this movie. I think we saw a sneak preview like shortly before it came out, and I remember remembering very little about it. Like, it was hard to recall any details when we were going into this watching of it. I couldn't remember anything about the first time I saw it because it was just this kind of overall bland brown thing in my brain, this splotch. It was so forgettable. My wife, we were sitting there watching the movie. She's like, I never saw this, and I'm like, no, we did. We saw it in theaters. She's like, I never saw this. And
You've seen it a million times in a million different movies. That's the problem.
But it wasn't until like the end of the movie where she's like, oh wait, I think I saw this. It was so forgettable. By then, I was asleep. Full disclosure, I didn't finish this movie on this rewatch, guys. I was unconscious.
The mythology and the dialogue in this movie read like stereo instructions.
Yeah,
There's so much information that, frankly, I don't care about, that it made me yearn for George Lucas prequel political talk. Like, I was like, get me back to Attack of the Clones. I will gladly.
It is, so famously, when David Lynch adapted Dune, it was so confusing and such a mess that people were handed a glossary going into the movie theater of different terms to do with the film. This needed that. This is the most proper noun soup of a plot I've ever heard. Like, you've got Deja Thoris and Sabthon and Tardos Mors and the Therns, one of whom is Mad-Eye Shang, and the cities of Helium and something else. Barsum.
It's too much.
You got Tars, Tarkas, and Sola. That's like 1/4 of them. Jedox, which are a thing. Like, that you could go on and on and on, and it all just sort of forms this meaningless gobbledygook in your head. And it is like at the same time incomprehensibly obtuse and also weirdly generic. And I think to your point, Greg, like it all feels very, very stock. But a big part of that, and I am going to lay this at the film's feet, a big part of that is the film not understanding that we've seen this story a million times since this, and the film needs to understand that. The film wants to be, kind of timeless in a way. It wants to kind of have it both ways like that. It wants to be this timeless space adventure, but also be timely, and it wants to exist outside of time. And I'm kind of rambling, but I think
let's put it into a little bit of context in that it's based on these novels written by Edgar Rice Burroughs
of Tarzan fame
over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And basically these novels inspired Star Wars, Star Trek, Superman, Total Recall, Avatar.
Yeah, and because of that, like, Andrew Stanton seemed to believe that he could just show you the magic of, like, it seemed like Andrew Stanton is so in love with these books that he just thought that portraying them as is, their love would shine through. Like he's quoted because he also messed around with the marketing a bunch, and we're probably going to want to talk about the marketing.
We will talk about that. The problem with Andrew Stanton having that hubris is he was picking the bones. Like there was nothing left.
Yeah.
There was nothing left. And to think that I had no idea. First off, I had not heard who Edgar Rice Burroughs was until a week ago. Sorry, I'm not a big Tarzan guy. And this is like, in all of my research, I'm finding out about him. And I'm finding out that there are books written about him. And he's got this huge following. But when you have a cult following like this, like, sorry, it's this weird equation where you can be derivative of something, but you can't be derivative of the derivative.
Yeah.
And that's what this entire movie is. It's like they're taking pieces from these other movies because the main audience has not read these Burroughs novels. They have no idea about their legacy. They know Superman. They know Star Wars. They know Total Recall. They know Avatar.
You're right. It's like he's stealing those things back from those other movies and then putting them back together into the original, but the pieces don't really fit together anymore. But yeah, I am going to lay all of this at Stanton's feet. I think this movie is his failure insofar as it is a failure, because of his weird level of confidence with the movie. And the movie itself, like, it doesn't really hang together on its own terms either. Like, the mishmash of elements gives you something that is really tonally confusing. But I will say, like, weird, Confederacy thing aside, when the movie's on Earth, it kind of works for me.
A little bit.
Like when he's hanging out with Bryan Cranston. Now, John Carter's motivation is super muddy because he just seems to be this guy who doesn't want to fight in a war, except he's really down to fight everybody he meets.
His motivation kind of reminds me of Maximus in Gladiator. Like he's sort of just like, I'll fight whoever's in front of me, but I really have no drive anymore. I've got no fire inside of me because I've lost everything.
He's got his cave of gold,
right?
And that's it.
And it's weird. The beginning of this movie has a tone or let's call them bits. Like, I love the bit when John Carter meets Bryan Cranston and he keeps trying to break out, and then it cuts to him being cuffed again, and then it cuts to him being cuffed again. And I'm like, okay, well, now we've got a little bit of a fun atmosphere, and then he gets to Mars or Barsoom.
Mars isn't fun,
right? And he tries to run, and he keeps falling, and I'm like, okay, and then that's where the fun ends. There's no more fun. The fun's over. Like, you had 2 bits of fun. You have your popcorn. Thank me for the 2 bits of fun. Now you get 2 hours of crazy Mars politics that no one cares about.
No, I don't care about the Tharks. I don't care about how their society works. I don't care about what the white apes are. I a little bit care about that cute dog with super speed.
That's, you could see like that was an Andrew Stanton edition. I think we can give him credit for, right? Like, he's able to make a really cute, likable CGI character, and that's like the one thing in the movie that like works pretty well.
Well, let's even talk about Andrew Stanton's like trying to visualize these books. I don't care what the source material is, right? You've got all of these Mars people, at least the humans, the human-esque Mars people. They are clearly a shade of a different nature of Taylor Kitsch.
They're explicitly called Red Martians.
Yes, they're
I'd
Red
like to
Martians.
Park on that for a second, given that the cave that transports him to Barsoom appears to have mystical powers in the eyes of the Native Americans.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird to say that hasn't aged well since the movie came out in 2012. I feel like it was not good when it came out. I feel like
this is a movie about a Confederate soldier befriending a bunch of, I'll just say it, red men.
I was just gonna say, I think, like, aside from all the muddled, confusing storytelling, even when there's like a battle sequence between the two human-esque Martian sides, you can't even tell which one is which. They're all dressed exactly the same, with like someone's slight red and some of her slight blue. but otherwise, like, you can't even tell who's the good guy, which one's which. What am I rooting for? You can't. You can't even decipher the action scenes,
especially with the airships. The airships were super confusing.
They're the same thing, right?
The only one you can really pick out of a bunch is John Carter, because he's pale as all can be, and he looks sickly compared to everybody on Mars. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm making a movie and I have a hero, I don't want him looking sickly next to every other character he comes across. You
mean you don't want to give him that most heroic of traits, anemia?
Right? He looks anemic. He looks like he needs bed rest for at least 6 to 8 weeks.
No, you're right. It's a baffling, weird choice. And the idea, I get why you couldn't just paint everybody red, like actual like fire engine red. Like that would have been a horrible choice. But instead, everybody just kind of looks like they spent the summer in Cancun.
Yeah, it looked like Boca Raton. Right? It's just like, hey, we're retired on Mars, and we're just a shade that looks a little unhealthy.
Yeah, and we all have like these red tattoos on us because of reasons. But other than that, we just sort of look maybe Australian. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It's a baffling choice in a movie filled with baffling choices.
Yeah, so my biggest plot peeve, and it actually comes like 5 minutes into the movie, or 5 to 10 minutes into the movie. So I'm going to put you guys in Ned, the nephew's shoes, okay?
Yeah.
You get to your uncle's house, and his lawyer hands you a journal, his private journal. And it's for your eyes only, okay? And you sit down with this private journal. What is the first thing you're going to do?
Read the journal?
No, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the end, because I want to see what the last goddamn thing my uncle wrote was.
Because
why would
I guess you would, wouldn't you?
Like, it's not the latest Harry Potter or Twilight. Like, no, this was his journal. Let me find out what my uncle wrote last, right before he died, and then I'll sort of flip back and sort of contextualize things. It's very, very odd. Like, he just sits down and let me just open it up.
I got a question. So at the end, he gets transported back to Earth, and he wakes up in his, 15-year-old body. And I really liked the cracking and everything and finding the skeleton of Bryan Cranston. I enjoyed that scene. That was a fun little bit of business. But it's implied that body was sitting in a sort of stasis, waiting for him.
Okay.
When he got transported to Mars, was that body waiting for him too?
I think so. I think so.
So someone had just made a Taylor Kitsch, Golem? And put it up there just to be inhabited?
I can't think that deep about this movie. I refuse to.
That's super fair. That's super fair. It is asking so much of you just to comprehend its plot. Like, this thing has the maybe the best example since Tron Legacy of the plotting that is so it's so emblematic of Disney in this era, in the early 2010s. You see it in the Pirates sequels. You see it in Tron Legacy. It's go to place to get thing plotting.
Yeah.
The entire second act is well, we got to go get the thing at the place. And then you go to the place, and then you find out a thing that recontextualizes the things you saw before. And then you got to go to another place to get another thing. And then you end up back in a Coliseum, and you got to fight some monkeys. That's just this movie. But you always end up in a Coliseum. You got to fight something. And the Pirates sequels had this in spades. I feel like Pirates of the Caribbean 1 sort of walks right up to the line of how complicated a plot can be and still be entertaining.
Pirates of the Caribbean 1 was so great, it's great because it was such a surprise.
Yeah.
Nobody expected it to be as good as it was. And then those two sequels where they basically took a 3-hour movie and turned it into a 6-hour movie and broke it up. Changed the business forever, but they're terrible. They're 30-minute action sequences.
Yeah, they're awful movies that made a giant pile of money, and Disney learned every single wrong lesson they possibly could from making them. And that's how you end up with Tron Legacy, and that's how you end up with John Carter.
Right.
You can draw a line between those things. And it took forever for them to climb out of this hole. And this is a big hole full of giant monkey crap. It's a bad hole.
It is a huge hole. Go ahead, Will.
Rise of Skywalker. It's the same thing. I mean, I wouldn't say they're out of it yet, because that's the same, like, go to a place and get a thing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of depressing, but...
Yeah, that's a big place thing. And look, guys, I love place as much as the next guy. Thing I could take or leave, but I love place.
We can take or leave this conversation, but my only question is, does this movie work if you replace Taylor Kitsch? Not because I think that he's not worthy of it.
No.
I'm thinking, like, put Taylor Kitsch in The Martian, and that movie doesn't work. What do we get Matt Damon?
Yeah.
Throw him
Well,
on
I,
Mars.
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask that, Will, because I want you guys to think of a world where this movie was marketed properly, and instead of Taylor Kitsch in the John Carter role, it's Chris Pine.
It's a little more charming, but it's still a confusing cluster of bad ideas from start to finish.
I mean, Greg, you want to come up with a different word than cluster?
No. It's a mess. That's the
Super
nicest
fair.
word I could think of to describe John Carter of Mars.
Yeah. With Chris Pine, it's marginally more charming, but the thing is that, like, Chris Pine still couldn't pull off the muddied character arc of John Carter in this movie. Like, we start out with a guy who's punching everybody in the face because he doesn't want to fight in a war. We don't even get the first flashback to his backstory until like 45 minutes in, when we see that he had a daughter.
Right.
Cool.
But
I was asleep by then.
I get where you're going with that, but I feel charm can hide a lot of bad things. Like, even if you look at Raiders of the Lost Ark, Raiders of the Lost Ark is a masterpiece. Does Indiana Jones really have a character arc? Not particularly.
No, he doesn't need one because he's
but Harrison
charming.
Ford's
but, like,
charm hides a lot of that. Now, John Carter, very bad movie. And Taylor Kitsch just, I mean, talk about a brick wall of charisma.
I really don't think that's his fault, though, because the character as written is not charming.
yeah.
The character's arc in the film is that he's an angry murder machine who realizes the virtues of murder. That's what he does.
Honestly, though, I don't think Taylor Kitsch is the most questionable casting decision.
Oh, really?
Well, no. Did you know that for some reason one of the young Thark warriors is voiced by David Schwimmer? Why did they do
What?
that? Why did they do that? He's the Thark who
What?
informs He's the Thark who informs Tars Tarkas that 18 of the Thark eggs didn't hatch, and then they kill the eggs. Yeah, that was Schwimmer. They threw Schwimmer a paycheck. Let's just throw some money at this.
He needs it.
He's raking in the dough on all his friends' residuals. But, like, let's just give him a line in John Carter too. Whatever. I don't
Holy
know.
crap!
Why did they
I
do
had
that?
no idea. That is absurd.
It's interesting when you do a little research on this movie. So Willem Dafoe really just wanted to do it because he thought it'd be fun to walk around in stilts.
I bet it was.
And if you go on YouTube, and I implore you to do this, what I want you to do is I want you to YouTube, if you're listening here, wait until you're done listening to this episode, of course. That goes without saying. But you
obviously.
go to YouTube, and you look up behind-the-scenes Avatar, okay? And watch like 30 seconds of that. And it just looks like very highbrow, everybody knows what they're doing, okay? And then I want you to look up behind-the-scenes John Carter. It looks like a This Is Spinal Tap version of Avatar. It looks you've got Thomas Hayden Church and you've got Willem Dafoe walking around on stilts, and it just looks
Wait.
like,
I have a serious question.
Yeah.
Thomas Hayden Church was in this movie?
yeah, he's the second Tarkin. What are they? What are they called?
Tharks. They're called Tharks, Garrett.
Tharks.
There was a
He's
glossary.
the mean Thark.
He's the
Oh, with the one broken off thingy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. That's Thomas Hayden Church for
Yeah,
no reason.
Yeah. I mean, coming off some of that using up the rest of that sideways cachet.
Yeah,
And
he used half to be Sandman, and then the other half went into this.
That's right.
Hey guys, I just read something interesting and weird.
Yeah.
So did you realize that the nephew character is Edgar Rice Burroughs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting to nobody.
Okay.
I kind of liked that part. I'm a real sucker for metafiction. Like I said, the Yeah, the ending with Ned like doing the thing on the tomb. I'm a real sucker for a tomb with a secret way to open it. Like I really love that. And the fact that he like lured the Thurn there, and then John Carter shows up and shoots him. Like I liked all of that stuff.
You know what it reminded me of when he found out it was Ned. He's like, oh, he calls me Ned. It reminded me of the end of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. when the murderer is like, Will Benson? Benson. And it's like a head explosion. It's been in front of you this whole time. I mean,
it was very National Treasure, but like the dumbest version of National Treasure, which is already pretty dumb. But I was here for it. I make no apologies. Also, that kid is in a bunch of Robert Rodriguez movies, and he's charming.
Good for him. So let's.
And Robert Rodriguez almost made this movie, actually.
Well, I'm glad he didn't.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway,
If only Andrew Stanton also didn't.
Yeah.
So John Carter had a budget of roughly $264 million, which still to this day ranks like number 9 on the highest budgeted movies ever. It's estimated that it lost a total of like $350 million because, for those who don't know, you take a production budget, you basically double it for marketing and PR and all of that stuff. So for a budget of $250 million, you basically need $1 billion to make it a success.
This movie didn't make $1 billion.
It did not. It did not make $1 billion. Between this and The Lone Ranger, I mean, it's a rough 3 years for the Walt Disney Company here. You're talking. In 2010, you've got Prince of Persia, which.
Oh, I forgot that was them.
Yeah.
So they just kept making this type of movie over and over, even though it
Yeah.
never worked.
Well, Prince of
And
Persia.
that's what's fast. Yeah.
Prince of
You go
Persia
ahead,
had
sorry.
Bruckheimer behind it, so they thought it would be the next Pirates, right? It was not, okay? Then you get John Carter, bomb. Then you get Lone Ranger, bomb. So let me give you a little calendar here, like a little sequence of events. Bob Iger becomes CEO of Disney in 2005, okay? In 2006, he acquires Pixar. Because if you look at the movies that were coming out of Disney between the years of 2006 and 2010, it is, it is a desert. A desert. You're talking about like the Shaggy Dog. You guys remember the Shaggy Dog? How about Herbie Fully Loaded? Did you guys go see Herbie Fully Loaded?
Can't say I did.
Didn't see that, no.
We're talking about like their big tentpole movies. Hold on, let me get one up here. I had one before. Yeah, so you're talking in 2005 when Bob Iger becomes CEO. These are summer movies for Disney. Herbie Fully Loaded, Sky High.
Sky High's pretty good.
Yeah.
Good flick.
Yeah, you wanna stand behind that one?
I mean, it's not a bad flick. It didn't make. I don't think it made a whole bunch of money.
Yeah. They got Chicken Little around the Thanksgiving time. They got Chronicles of Narnia around Christmas, and it only gets worse in 2006. You know, when you've got the Shaggy Dog in March. They thankfully had a sequel to Pirates of the Caribbean. But here's the thing: 2006, Bob Iger's like, we need to acquire Pixar. We don't know what we're doing, and for a good 5 years, the only good Disney movies are Pixar movies. And then in 2009, he's like, get me Marvel. Get me Marvel, right? And then in 2012, after losing $350 million off of John Carter, which clearly they wanted it to be the next Star Wars, he's like, you know what, screw it. Let's just acquire Star Wars. Let's just get me $4 billion. I'm going to write a check to George Lucas. And like, at a certain point, it's brilliant. You know, at a certain point, it's not brilliant because it's so obvious. When you have an unlimited piggy bank where you can acquire something like Lucasfilm and make your own Star Wars movies, the crapshoot of throwing money at a Prince of Persia and a Lone Ranger and a John Carter, it's dumb. Like, you would be crazy to keep doing that.
So I can give you some context on why they were doing that, actually. It comes down to one guy, and his name's Rich Ross.
Right.
Yeah, and so I don't know if Rich Ross still works there, but he basically got hired to remake Disney's live action division in 2009 because of all the movies that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Shaggy Dog and Herbie Fully Loaded and all that crap no one liked. And so he tried to pivot towards these bigger, more special effects driven movies. The funny thing, though, is that John Carter was already in development when he got there. It was in the early stages. And you guys know that, when a new studio head takes over, the usual thing they do is they dump everything. And he didn't dump this. And I used to think that it was dumb that studio heads did that. And I don't think that anymore. He's responsible for so many of those movies you just listed. He right after this, he had Lone Ranger on the heels of it, and then Oz the Great and Powerful right afterwards.
Good
Alice in Wonderland movies.
Well,
the
Alice
Alice
in
in
Wonderland
Wonderland
made money, so we can't.
Alice in Wonderland made quite a bit of money,
made money. So that's actually the beginning of them taking their IP and live actioning it up to make $1 billion.
Which proved to be like way more successful than this.
Right.
But it's basically from what I've been reading, Bob Iger was so excited with Marvel just being a money machine that he didn't really care about what Rich Ross was doing. And Rich Ross was able to just sort of take these big bets because they knew they had Marvel and they knew that these movies were as often as not going to gross $1 billion. So they could just try out a Tron Legacy. Or try out a Lone Ranger, or an Oz the Great and Powerful, or a Maleficent, which actually made them some money and got a sequel.
Right. So like it was only 2 years after John Carter that you had in really not too far within like 10 months of each other. You had Maleficent and you had Cinderella. So which all made money, and you had Into the Woods, which was their Christmas Day release, which made a bunch of money, but it also only had like a $50 million budget. It was like dirt cheap. So it's so weird seeing what kind of legacy John Carter has left because of so much money being put into something, frankly, sorry, all of you Edgar Rice Burroughs fans, nobody had ever heard about.
Yeah.
And trying to build a franchise from scratch when you've got all of this. You basically have the mother dough. Is that what you do with sourdough? The mother dough in the fridge, and you keep making bread out of that? Okay, that's
sourdough starter. You're looking for sourdough starter.
Starter, yeah.
You basically have a bunch of starters in the fridge, and you can make bread with just.
You don't put starter in the fridge. Keep it on the counter.
You know what? I
don't refrigerate it.
I should have done my bread research before we.
Yeah. How long have we been quarantining for you to not know about bread? We all know about bread now.
Well, you know what? I've gained
we did
enough
bread
weight.
Before the protest. That's how it worked.
I've gained enough weight in quarantine without making my own bread that I can't start making my own bread now.
You're not alone in this.
But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, the failure of John Carter did represent an inflection point in the studio. And it is emblematic of a certain kind of movie that Rich Ross kept taking swings with. But I want to make 2 quick points. The first is that Disney was not unique in doing this at this time. Like, these director-driven, weird movies were getting greenlit around this time. This was around the time of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, Snow White and the Huntsman, which got a sequel. Weird movies. Like, early 2010s films were odd. Like, Scott Pilgrim versus the World got a bunch of money, which was good. Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters, Cowboys and Aliens. Remember Cowboys and Aliens?
I do remember Cowboys and Aliens.
That was Jon Favreau's movie he made after Iron Man 2, guys.
It's so odd because you've got all of these movies that clearly they're trying to hit home runs with, but when you're swinging for a home run, you're either getting a home run or a strikeout. There's no there's no double, there's no single. Like, it's you're either swinging for the fences or it's a strikeout. But then you've got movies in the early to mid 2010s where you've got a huge movie star, the biggest movie star of all time. You got Tom Cruise, and you've got a big budget. You've got a studio behind it, and that movie's called Edge of Tomorrow, which I rewatched recently, and it's an excellent, fun movie, right? But you've got these crazy ideas, like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and then you've got something that's sort of more conventional, like a Tom Cruise science fiction movie with a big budget, and both of them don't do well. So at that point, all these studios are sitting there going, well, what the hell can we do? If Tom Cruise can't sell a movie...
Well, I think maybe...
What do
I mean,
we
this
do?
isn't my realm so much, but I think I was looking at the top 20, the top grossing films of 2012, and I think it just goes to show it's The Avengers, Skyfall, Dark Knight Rises, Hobbit, Ice Age, Continental Drift, Twilight Saga, Amazing Spider-Man, Madagascar 3, Hunger Games, and Men in Black 3. And only the Hunger Games out of that was like an unproven property at the time. So I think at this time what you're realizing is movie stars aren't going to sell it as much. It's got to be these IP. And granted, John Carter was, but just one that nobody knew.
Well, with Hunger Games, they at least took a book where their target audience was still alive.
Fair point. Yeah.
Right? And could still buy like tickets to go to the movies. Where John Carter was like, well, we hope these great grandparents passed these stories down to their great grandkids.
Well, and even beyond that, like Andrew Stanton, because of his clout at Pixar, had a hand, like I mentioned before, in the marketing and kept insisting that these grandparents were going to show up. Like, just to give you some examples, because I really just want to keep sticking it to Andrew Stanton, was he insisted on using Kashmir, the Led Zeppelin song, in the trailer, even though it didn't test well. He insisted on calling it John Carter instead of John Carter of Mars because, quote, it's about a guy, Greg, the thing you don't understand is that it's about a guy becoming John Carter of Mars. He wanted to keep Mars in the title for future films instead.
That's
also
crazy because John Carter is such a bad name for a big budget action adventure movie you want to bring teens to, you know? Like nobody's going to the theater. You see John Carter, you just assume that's like Michael Clayton or something. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't ring true of like, oh, that's a big sci-fi action film I should go see.
Yeah.
Like, well, I bet some people went into it
but
and
he didn't want people to know. He also cut the trailer to make sure that it didn't give away too much of the story. He said, quote, "My joy when I first saw the trailer for Star Wars is I saw a little bit of everything in the movie and I had no idea how it connected and I had to go see the movie. So the last thing I'm going to do is ruin that little kid's experience." Like,
but he made a movie where you see every little piece of the movie and can't figure out how those pieces go together.
Yeah, this guy was so devoted to his love of Burroughs and his love of this IP that he didn't want to change anything about it, and he wanted to replicate his experience. And because we were in this director-driven time that we were talking about, Disney let him, and it fell on its face.
Yeah, and I think
it's so rough.
I think what's so apparent about it is that there was a hands-off approach that will never exist as for an indefinite amount of time. It was Andrew Stanton, here's your money, you go do this, we trust you, this is an experiment, but hey, you're gonna make us a bunch of money off of this. And there was nobody on set going, man, this is really boring. Like, can we get like David Mamet over here to write some dialogue? Like, this is terrible.
Yeah, maybe it could be less MacGuffin centric, and maybe the MacGuffins could be less weird blue threads.
All right, we're at an hour 10,
yeah,
so do with that what you will.
So what are your main takeaways from John Carter? Like macro, micro, as a movie, as a legacy, what do you take away from it? Greg.
What do I take away from it? I mean, I will say it took away a couple hours of my life twice. It's not the kind of movie I would recommend to basically anybody because it's stuff you've seen before, but it's disjointed. And it's not especially fun. It has a couple small moments. Again, the gravity scene where he's adjusting to the gravity, the cute little creature. Those are the little bright spots. And otherwise, it's just kind of this like boring, meandering thing that proved that you can't just spend a whole bunch of money on a movie and expect that movie to make that money back just because you stamp Disney on it, just because you stamp a well-known director's name on it, because if it's not good, people aren't all going to just line up for it.
especially if you don't tell them what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, John? What do you think? What do you take away?
I think it's an incredible inflection point. This was the beginning of the end for how the 2010s were doing blockbusters. Like you guys said, this was the end of this in particular wasn't, but it was sort of one of the death knells, along with like Lone Ranger and the Tom Cruise movie you mentioned, which is so forgettable I don't remember the name. All of those for like,
it's a great movie. It's lots of fun.
Edge of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow is really good, but
Live,
like
Die, Repeat.
Oh, were you thinking about Prince of Persia that I mentioned earlier? That
I was actually thinking of Edge of Tomorrow. But yeah, Edge of Tomorrow is great, but you're right that like this was the end of directors taking big swings, because this is one of the biggest swings I've ever seen a director take. That like this dude's faith that other people would like this thing he liked if he just presented it as faithfully as possible. It's kind of like cringy to watch it fail that bad, because I can imagine how hurt he must be that no one was willing to take that journey with him. And he just has that faith at every turn. It's just like, no, he's got to be John Carter. He's got to be a Confederate general. He's got to go to Barsoom. It's got to be exactly the same. Even though like the first reaction I had when I saw the movie was like, we know so many things about Mars that tell us that none of this is true. And like, you're not even gonna like put a line in there about like, oh, there's a dome over the planet and this is all happening under the surface. No, none of that. You're just gonna, okay, cool, whatever.
What about you, Will? You have anything that you take away from this?
Yeah, I mean, my only big takeaway from it was the same thing I had at the time. I didn't go see it, but Taylor Kitsch. You know, I was a big fan of his leading into this movie. I think he had about 3 movies that came out that summer because he got them all around the same time.
Well,
like
yeah.
Battleship.
Battleship. Within months, he came back with Battleship.
And then
Andrew Stanton directed Battleship?
No,
Kitsch
Taylor
was in it.
Kitsch.
Yeah.
Taylor
Oh,
Kitsch.
Taylor Kitsch.
I was a big Friday Night Lights guy, and this like torpedoed his career for a long time. It's not until like Waco that just that he's gotten like a big breakout role and has finally had a like resurgence of popularity. And I mean, at the time, I don't know if he was a good actor in Friday Night Lights, but it was kind of, I was like, oh, this is one of my guys getting a big shot. And I think you're right. I think it was the script more than it was him, but it definitely did derail him for a while. So.
Yeah,
it wasn't not him.
I did.
But,
yeah, I agree. In that, like, I think Taylor Kitsch with Friday Night Lights, he was right place, right time, and then too many studios picked the wrong guy to hitch their wagon to you know, sort of drive these big budget summer blockbusters. It just didn't work. I think.
By the way, speaking of that, what's Sam Worthington up to these days?
Right. I mean, I guess he'll be in the Avatar sequels. No, is he in the?
He's probably doing another Terminator or something.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know why I thought of him just now. I don't know.
He's a Taylor Kitsch type. He's a guy who stars in big budget movies, and I can't really figure out what his face looks like right now. That's the same category.
I would love to get these agents and managers on the phone and just like pick their minds about like, so what is it that people say you can't get them into, like, you can't get Sam Worthington in like a tiny little bit role on Law & Order SVU, or is he just not willing to take it? Because that's a big thing too. I think my biggest takeaway of John Carter is that this is why every movie that comes out from Marvel or Lucasfilm or really Disney, they look the same. And they come out of that factory, and there's no real directorial stamp or style to them, because that's it. No, everything's got to look the same. You know, we allowed Andrew Stanton to do what he wanted to do, and look what happened, right?
We've been hurt before, never again.
Right? Gore Verbinski gave us $1 billion worth of Pirates of the Caribbean money, and we had him do The Lone Ranger, and nobody went to see it. So from now on, we're just going to give people what they want to see, and your job as a director we hire is to fulfill that visual and visual look and tonality, and that's where we are.
You're gonna do what the Previs company says, and that's gonna
Exactly.
be the end of it.
Just call and run plays.
Well, that's gonna do it. I think that's all we should say about John Carter. It's more.
That's
than
all it
what,
deserves.
That's all. It's more than what needed to be said. So, Will, do you have anything to plug?
Nah, man, just this podcast.
Just this podcast. How about you, Greg?
You could just follow me on the Twitter at It's Greg Hahn, and Instagram. I post pictures of toys. Got some sweet Battle Beasts in recently, so check out It's Greg's Toys.
Oh yeah, I got a big box of my fiance's old McDonald's toys we grabbed from her parents' house. It's in my garage for you to sort through whenever you want, Greg.
That sounds fun. I'd love to dig through some.
Gonna be great.
Some old McDonald's toys. Yeah.
How about you, John?
You can follow me on Twitter at I Better Be Funny. It's mainly pro wrestling related sarcasm and sadness tweets these days. I'll let you guys know next time I'm running a Zoom class to teach people how to make gumbo.
Oh,
100%.
man.
I'll be there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll let you guys know.
Excellent.
This isn't for the general. I mean, I guess I could invite the listeners too. Sure, let's talk. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to learn to make gumbo.
Oh man, now's the time to learn how to make gumbo, everybody. Well, the next time you hear us, it'll probably be to discuss Hamilton, because I will have lots to say, and unless Will or Greg or whoever else decides to join us gives it rave reviews, I'll kick them out of the call. That's about it. There is nothing but 5-star reviews allowed at the DplusCast when it comes to Hamilton.
Don't throw away your shot, Garrett.
You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at DplusCast, all spelled out. Please rate, review, subscribe. So happy that you're listening to us, but please, for the love of God, wear a damn mask. Listen, if you could learn 2 lessons from this episode of the DplusCast, it is to wear a mask and to not give $300 million to an unproven intellectual property. And I think that's something we can all carry with us for this week. An
unproven live-action director. That's one last dunk on Andrew Stanton for me for this episode. I'm done!
Okay, sorry, Andrew Stanton. Love Finding Nemo. Love WALL-E.
I love WALL-E.
We love all
WALL-E.
your Pixar work, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Thanks so much for listening.